Good afternoon. I'm Attorney Ben Crump, and along with Attorney Michelle Rayner and Attorney Kelly McCabe, we have the honor of representing Markeis McGlockton's family, Michael McGlockton, Monica Moore, and Brittany Jacobs, his partner. The Michael Drejka conviction and sentence was important not just for the family of Markeis McGlockton, but it was also important for the spirit of Trayvon Martin and all the victims of Stand Your Ground murders. And it was also important for the supporters, those people in communities of color, to know that equal justice under law is possible in America when a white person kills an unarmed black man and then claims the protection of the racist Stand Your Ground law to vindicate them. This statement was also important to speak to the people who were disappointed over the Amber Geiger sentence when she killed an unarmed black man, Botham Jones, in his own apartment and only received 10 years. There, the punishment did not fit the crime. I am so elated that Attorney Rayner and I get to look at this family and say this case was historic. This case was precedent-setting because it showed that equal justice under the law is possible in America for black and brown people too. Also, for those supporters who were so disappointed, Michelle, in Texas, where we see over and over again the courts throw the book at black people and brown people when they are accused and convicted of a crime, but to see when it's reversed and you have a dead black person lying on the ground, there seems to be all the consideration and sympathy for white murderers. Well, today, thanks to the prosecutors and the judge, they said in America, this day, we will have equal justice under the law. And so Brittany Jacobs can tell her 4 babies that the killer of their father did not get away with murder, did not be able to sweep his life under the rug. And for people of color, that's such an important precedent.
Okay, we're going to step away.
It overturns the precedent 7 years ago what that jury in Sanford, Florida did. In Pinellas County, they have set the new precedents when people try to think they have the authority to kill a minority based on Stand Your Ground. So each day we get a little closer to justice. The journey for justice is long. Thank you all for leading that journey to justice, Brittany, Monica, and Michael. And certainly with this great lawyer, Attorney Michelle Rayner. She will speak to you now, and then the family will address you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank y'all for being here. You know, as Attorney Crump has said, this was a momentous day. You know, I shared earlier this week, one of the prosecutors in the case asked myself and the McGlockton family, I bet you never thought you would see this day. And I told him we didn't think we would see this day because far too often when black lives are taken, our lives are not valued as much or as equally. That's why there's a movement called Black Lives Matter. And I'm so thankful that we had a prosecution team that valued Markeis's life. Not only I believe it was apparent in trial, but it was also apparent in the sentencing. And it was also apparent in the sentencing, this refrain that always tends to happen when black people are killed by the hands of white folks, that once again there's the victim shaming, the victimization of the criminalization rather of the victim.
His character.
essentially the assassination of Markeis's character. And I'm so glad that the prosecution didn't let that sit. They talked about how the defense kept talking about that Markeis was a bad parent, he was a thug, a drug-crazed maniac. Because guess what? When we are killed by the police, when we are killed by state-sanctioned violence, or when we are killed and stand your ground is able to be used, what happens is that there's a refrain that comes that our character is assassinated. And guess what? It ended today. It ended today with a sentence of 20 years. I've spoken with the family, and I know Michael and Brittany will share with you that is an appropriate sentence, and we feel that it is fair. Of course, we'd have liked to see Michael Drejka maxed out at 30 years, but we believe that 20 is fair and appropriate. Judge Malone did his analysis, and so we stand with his decision. But it also sends a message that you cannot go around starting a fight and hiding behind stand your ground. You cannot start and create conflict and think that very law that you've created conflict will protect you. Not so. And so we are glad that Pinellas County, for all of its wonderfulness and sometimes not wonderfulness, got it right with regard to this verdict and also with regard to the sentence. I'm going to let you hear from Michael McGlockton.
Step up and talk as loud as you can if you got your note to read.
I guess what I want to say is we want to thank, now,
It's okay.
what I want to say is thank you to Judge Malone. Although Michael Drejka only got 20 years, as the father of the victim, we wanted to see the max, but 20 years, I guess we'll take that.
Amen.
And I guess for the most part, that I guess for Michael Drejka, you know, this guy pretty much walked around with these codes and rules that he wanted to live by, which was, I want to say they called it the tulip rule or something like that, where he would match equal force with whatever situation that he came across. Well, in this case, what I wanted to see is, you took my son's life, so why don't we take yours? But obviously that wasn't on the table, so, you know, obviously we wanted to see the full 30 years, but the judge only gave him 20, so I guess we got to live with that. But for the most part, just like I said before, I guess from this point on, you know, me and my family would start to try to, you know, the healing process and try to go on from there. So, as far as trying to forgive Michael Drejka, I know in the Bible, it talks about you got to forgive those who trespass against you. But at this point in my life, I'm not there yet. And if the Lord just so happened to choose to take me before I get to that point, I guess me and Michael Drejka have to finish that in hell. But that's just where I'm at with that right now. I can't forgive Michael Drejka. There's no forgiveness in my heart right now. It's not. My only son is gone. Michael Drejka is still living. He's still breathing. Right. His wife can come see him whenever she feels like it. I can't go see my son. I got my son on my. I got my son ashes in an urn on my table. Michael Drejka is still breathing. There's no forgiveness in my heart right now. None.
Do you feel like you said all that you wanted to say to him today?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. I laid it out on the line. I told him exactly how I felt. Yeah.
The judge said he didn't show any remorse. Is that how you felt as well?
Every interview that I watched up to this point, he showed absolutely no remorse. I mean, I spoke about it inside the courtroom about, I guess he did an interview with Reginald Roundtree. And the only thing that he showed emotion about was him being away from his pets and his wife. Even when he did the interview the day of the murder, the detective told him that Markeis had expired. He sat there, didn't say nothing. Expression on his face did not change. That's a slap in the face to us. Us, period.
Yeah.
You know, it wouldn't be so bad if he would have came out and said, hey, look, I'm sorry for what happened. You know, if I had a chance to do it all over again, I would have did this. But he said none of that. Right. Nothing at all.
Right.
Did you see that expression change today?
Oh, no. No, he sat there just like he always did.
Now you'll hear from Brittany Jacobs, and then we will
Take a few questions.
entertain your questions as much as
We all fought hard for this day, and now I can go home and tell my children that the killer didn't get away with murder of their daddy, and that I know Markeis is up there in heaven smiling because we did get justice for him, and I know he's happy that, you know, I stood up and I stood for him, and I know that it was a long road, and I know the kids will never see their daddy again, or never, there's nothing they can remember of him anymore. And just, he died trying to protect us, and it's all unfair still, but 20 years, I guess we have to accept that.
I'm going to ask you the same question. Do you feel like you said everything you wanted to say to Michael Drejka today?
I don't have nothing to say to him.
All right. So we'll take any questions you have. I would say this again, as Attorney Rayner and Attorney McCabe said, we want to thank Fred Schwab and the entire State Attorney's Office for really giving this family the dignity and respect that all victims should have. Many times we have not seen prosecutors in America fight like this for black people. So it was an important case and an important sentence, and that cannot be forgotten, that Pinellas County is an example for the rest of America when you have these justified, unnecessary, and inexplicable killings, yet again, of unarmed black people in America.
Do you hope that this also sets a precedent for maybe lawmakers to look at the Stand Your Ground law?
Well,
Yes.
I'm going to let Michelle speak to that. Then
Yes.
I'll say one thing for Trayvon's
Yes,
family.
I mean, I personally have already been speaking with several lawmakers who have been watching this particular case, because this does set a precedent of that, you know, the way that this law is written, the way that it is applied, it is not uniform across the board. There are real problems with Stand Your Ground. We don't even have to look at studies. I think you can look at the practical application of Stand Your Ground in this very case. So it is our hope, it is our goal that that this case will set a precedent and will be one of the stepping stones for us to repeal or ultimately amend Stand Your Ground.
Let me speak to that question. Since Trayvon Martin was killed on February 26, 2012, many people have acknowledged from communities of color that Stand Your Ground is a racist law that allows for it to be open season on black and brown people. And therefore, this case and so many other cases should speak to the hearts of the lawmakers to say, what message are we trying to send to our children? To say, settle your conflicts with guns and killing people, not conflict resolution, not diplomacy. So the hope is, in the last almost 7 years, when all America was educated after Trayvon was killed, just trying to walk home, and now Markeis McGlockton, which a lot of people refer to as Trayvon Martin 2.0, hopefully the education lesson has become a teachable moment for all America. And hopefully those people in Texas and all around where that young brother was unarmed, killed in his own apartment, these teachable moments have to mean something. Hopefully, Michelle, we won't see another hashtag next week claiming Stand Your Ground. And so lawmakers, you can do that. You can help. You can make it where Markeis's children can understand that this law helped precipitate the mentality of Michael Drejka in thinking that he could kill this unarmed person because he disagreed with them. That's not how we settle problems. That's not America.
Brittany, Michael,
I was going to take his...
Mr. Drejka's lawyers have already said that they plan to appeal this. What's your response to that?
It's okay, you don't have to respond.
Yeah, he should never get out of jail In her estimation, certainly 20 years, he should not get out of jail before that.
To be honest, I've had the opportunity to talk with Attorney McCabe. I believe that the state's case is appeal-proof. So, I mean, of course, they're going to do their process and procedure, but I believe that the state's case is appeal-proof. So I have no expectation that we're going to see this come back on appeal. But I did want to take your question because you had a question.
Do you want Kelly to speak to that real quick? Michelle and her are some of the leading criminal defense lawyers.
Are you good, Kelly?
I mean, appealing the case as a defense, that's normal standard procedure. They have to follow through with that to protect the defendant's rights. So that's just a standard thing that's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like Michelle said, I don't think there's anything appealable in this case.
Correct. Did you have a question?
I think Compton answered it.
Okay.
So after the verdict, I mean, what did you hear within the state from people with standard ground?
I mean,
you had mentioned that
people were elated. I mean, people were elated. I think that people were elated, and I think we have to take a beat here. We get elated when killers of black and brown folks are convicted. We get elated not because it's the regular, it's the norm. We're elated because it doesn't happen. My mother said to me, we don't get to see justice a lot on this side of heaven. So a lot of times when you see people who are elated, it's because our lives are not equal. That's just a fact. Even though we know intellectually that we should know, but the way that it's applied in the law, it's not the same. So what I was hearing from, I had people from Sweden contact me, South Africa contact me, telling me and saying, I'm so glad that there was a guilty verdict. I've been watching this case. I'm so glad. And then to see what happened in Dallas, and now to see what has happened here, saying, no, yeah, it's not just a conviction, but the same sentence that you would apply to any other defendant standing in Michael Drejka's shoes, that sentence needs to be applied in this case.
Have you seen active lawmakers wanting to present legislation?
But yeah, definitely. But I'm not going to go and start naming names and hold them their feet to the fire. But yeah.
I'll do that, but
I'm not.
okay, but
You got a little bit more pull than me. I'm not.
A lot of people feel encouraged by this case that this time is ripe to finally address stand your ground. Because remember, after Trayvon, they made it more difficult to convict somebody, especially for killing a person of color, based on stand your ground. But this case showed that regardless of what impediments that the lawmakers who are enemies of equality put out there, that there are people who are moral, who are going to do the right thing for people of color. And so Mike, Monica, and Brittany, and Markeis McGlockton's entire family would like to thank the NAACP and the other civil rights and human rights groups, the churches, for all their support. It is very important that we acknowledge this was a community effort.
Correct.
I love when Judge Malone talked about he's not swayed by the influences, but you had to see all the support that was there for Markeis McGlockton. And then the state attorney, Fred Schwab, said there was 46,000 Pinellas County residents, black, white, red, and brown, who said that we have to make sure there's justice for this father of 4 little children.
Right.
Let that sink in. 4 little children who are going to ask questions of Brittany and their grandparents. What did you do when that man killed our father? Well, Brittany Jacobs and Michelle and all of us, Monica, Mike, can hold our hands up in victory, because many people thought that he wouldn't even be charged. He wouldn't even be arrested. They never thought that he would be convicted for 20 years. So this is a victory for people who care about equality in America.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.